Chapter 10. A Fractured Bond. Ethan Brooks sat on the edge of his couch, his apartment bathed in the dim, flickering light of the muted television. The screen displayed endless loops of news footage, headlines screaming about Jason Watts and the fallout of the incident. Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the images, Jason's face, lifeless and bruised, as he was loaded onto a stretcher. Each loop of the broadcast chipped away at Ethan's fragile composure, the reality of his failure settling deeper into his chest. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, a sharp intrusion in the oppressive quiet. For a moment, Ethan considered ignoring it, the weight of guilt making every interaction feel unbearable. But when he saw Cynthia's name on the screen, he snatched it up, his voice cracking as he answered, "Ethan, hey, Cynthia, I saw the news. What the hell happened, Ethan?" Ethan exhaled shakily, his fingers gripping the phone tightly. "Ethan, it got out of control. Sean, he went too far. Cynthia, and you, what did you do? Ethan, I didn't stop it. I tried, but I didn't do enough." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan felt the chasm growing wider between them with every second. "Cynthia, do you even understand what this means? Jason could have died, Ethan. He still might not make it. Do you get that? Ethan, I know I messed up, Cynthia, don't. This isn't just about you messing up. It's about what this says about you, about us." Ethan's chest tightened. "Ethan, please, don't do this, Cynthia. Do you even see me? Do you understand what it's like for me, an Afro-Latino woman, watching this unfold? Every time I step outside, I wonder if someone like Sean sees me as a threat. And now you're telling me you stood by and let it happen? How am I supposed to trust you?" Ethan tried to speak, but his throat closed up. He had never considered how deeply Cynthia's identity shaped her view of the world, how the quiet, unspoken tensions had lingered between them, unaddressed but always present. "Cynthia, I don't know if I can be part of this. I need to think about where I stand, about us." The line went dead before Ethan could respond. He stared at the phone in his hand, the stillness around him crushing in its weight. Outside, the distant hum of the city continued, indifferent to the fractured bond that had just unraveled within the walls of his apartment. Chapter 11. Legal Maneuvers. The Watts family's home stood as a testament to Black excellence, a sprawling estate nestled in one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods. The exterior, a blend of modern glass and historic brick, was adorned with manicured gardens and sculptures by renowned Black artists. Inside, the atmosphere radiated both prestige and warmth. Walls were lined with paintings from luminaries like Jacob Lawrence and Kehinde Wiley, their vibrant colors telling stories of struggle, triumph, and resilience. Shelves displayed intricate carvings from Ghana and Haiti, each piece a nod to the family's roots and pride in their heritage. The air carried a faint, rich aroma of aged wood and fresh flowers, curated weekly by a local Black florist. Judge John Watts had built this life brick by brick. Born into modest beginnings in the Deep South, he had clawed his way out of systemic barriers through sheer determination. As a young man, John excelled academically, earning scholarships that took him to Ivy League halls, where he often stood as one of the few Black faces in the room. His sharp intellect and unyielding resolve made him a force to be reckoned with. Over decades, he cultivated relationships with political figures, business leaders, and activists, leveraging every connection to amass influence. His knack for navigating complex systems while championing equity had earned him both respect and fear. Today, that same resolve simmered beneath his composed exterior as he sat at the far end of the polished oak conference table in the estate's library. The room, bathed in soft golden light from an elaborate chandelier, was both a workspace and a sanctuary. Bookshelves stretching from floor to ceiling held volumes on law, history, and civil rights, alongside framed photos of family milestones and portraits of trailblazing Black figures. Alan Watts, his eldest son, sat at the head of the table, his posture commanding as he scanned the team of lawyers assembled before him. Alan, like his father, exuded a quiet authority. His tailored suit was immaculate, and his every movement spoke of precision. Around the table sat some of the brightest legal minds in the country, civil rights advocates, top-tier litigators, and media consultants, assembled to craft an ironclad strategy. Alan stepped forward, determination etched on his face. "Alan, First, we press charges. Not just against the officers involved, but against the department for fostering a culture of misconduct. Lawyer 1. We need to approach this carefully. The defense will argue that the officers were acting within protocol, especially since one of them claims Jason was reaching for a weapon. Alan. Jason doesn't own a weapon, and we're going to prove it. The fact that they're even floating that excuse is part of the problem. At the other end of the table, John leaned forward, his voice calm but steely. John, this case isn't just about Jason, it's about sending a message. We're going to shine a spotlight on systemic issues, and we're not backing down. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling over everyone present. John's voice carried the authority of a man who had fought battles and won wars in courtrooms and beyond. His presence alone was enough to galvanize those around him. Alan nodded and continued. Alan, we'll start with media outreach. Make sure Jason's story is told accurately and powerfully. We'll counteract any narrative that tries to paint him as anything other than the victim he is. Lawyer 2 spoke up, his tone measured but firm. Lawyer 2, we should also anticipate pushback from the police union. They'll rally their resources to discredit Jason and minimize the department's accountability. John's eyes narrowed, his determination evident. John, let them try. We'll be ready. They want to make this about Jason's actions that night? Fine. We'll make it about their policies, their training, their patterns of behavior. This isn't a one-off incident, and we all know it. Gloria entered quietly, carrying a tray of coffee and tea. Despite the weight of her grief, she moved with grace, her every action deliberate. She placed the tray on the table and lingered for a moment, her eyes meeting John's. John, thank you. The tension in his face softening momentarily. Gloria, do whatever it takes. This isn't just about us, it's about everyone who's been through this and didn't have a voice. Her words hung in the air, a poignant reminder of the stakes. Alan straightened, his resolve deepening. Alan, we'll make sure of it. For hours, the Watts family and their team dissected every possible angle of the case, their collective expertise and determination creating a formidable force. The library, with its rich history and elegant decor, became a battleground for justice. Outside, the evening descended into night, the estate glowing softly under the stars, a beacon of resilience and defiance in a world that demanded both. Chapter 12. A Partner's Dilemma. Sean slumped heavily in his worn leather armchair, the amber liquid in his tumbler catching the faint light of the television. The living room was a study in shadows, illuminated only by the flickering images from the muted screen. Empty beer cans and crumpled receipts littered the coffee table, a testament to the chaos that had seeped into his life. The air was thick with the scent of stale alcohol and the faint musk of neglect. Sean's jaw tightened as he took another swig, the whiskey burning a bitter path down his throat. In the doorway, Claire stood silently, her arms crossed over a faded cardigan. Her presence carried a quiet intensity, her once striking features softened by time and the weight of a hard life. Claire had grown up in foster care, bouncing from one temporary home to another. Each transition chipped away at her hope for stability, leaving behind scars that no amount of time could truly heal. She had once dreamed of becoming someone important, someone whose name mattered, a journalist maybe, or an artist. But those dreams had faded under the relentless strain of survival. Meeting Sean had felt like finding an anchor. He wasn't a perfect man, far from it, but he offered a stability she had never known. His job, though grueling and often dark, put a roof over their heads and food on the table. In the beginning, there had even been flashes of kindness in him that made her believe he could be her safe haven. Yet, as years passed, the same stubbornness and anger that fueled Sean's work began to creep into their home, eroding the fragile trust between them. Claire, you need to talk to someone, Sean. This is eating you alive. Sean's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Sean, talk to someone? About what? That I did my job? That some punk kid ended up in the hospital because he wouldn't listen? Claire's brows knitted together, the lines on her face deepening. Claire, is that what you really think? You think this was just about doing your job? Sean shot up from the chair, the tumbler rattling against the coffee table as he slammed it down. Sean, what else am I supposed to think, Claire? Huh? You think I'm gonna sit here and say it was my fault? That I, what? Panicked? Made a mistake? That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. Claire didn't flinch, her years of enduring Sean's outbursts giving her a resilience he couldn't shatter. She stepped closer, her voice softening but losing none of its resolve. Claire, Sean, I've seen this before. You're not the first person to bury what's killing them, but it's not gonna stay buried forever. And when it comes back up, it'll destroy you. Sean turned away, his broad shoulders heaving with the effort of holding back emotions he didn't know how to face. His stubbornness was a shield, forged in a childhood where admitting weakness was a luxury he couldn't afford. The son of an angry, broken father who lashed out at the world and a mother who disappeared when life became too much, Sean had learned early to rely on no one. Authority became his sanctuary, control his weapon. But now, in this moment, even those defenses felt fragile. Sean. It already has, Sean muttered, his voice barely audible. He sank back into the chair, his head falling into his hands. For the first time, the weight of what he'd done seemed to press visibly on him, but only for a fleeting moment. When he looked up again, the flicker of doubt was gone, replaced by the cold, defensive defiance that had carried him through his career. Sean, you don't get it. People like him, they don't follow the rules. They push, and when you push back, you're the bad guy. But someone has to keep the line. Someone has to keep order. Claire's heart ached at his words, at the warped justifications he clung to. She saw through the bravado to the wounded man beneath, but she also knew that Sean's stubbornness was a wall she couldn't break on her own. Claire, and what about me, Sean? What happens to us? You think your job, your anger isn't tearing us apart? Sean didn't answer, his silence heavier than any argument. Claire lingered for a moment longer, her eyes searching his for something. Remorse, vulnerability, anything. But when she turned and walked away, the room seemed to exhale with the weight of her departure. Left alone, Sean reached for the tumbler again, the whiskey his only solace in the suffocating quiet. The television flickered on, the images of protests and news anchors filling the void. Yet even as he stared at the screen, his mind drifted back to that dark road, to the moment everything had changed. And still, Sean couldn't bring himself to admit, even to the emptiness of his own home, that he bore any responsibility for what had happened. For Sean, guilt was a luxury, one he wasn't ready to afford.
To be continued. Thank you for listening to the audiobook The Other Side of the Law, written by Michael Liverpool. Be sure to click subscribe, hit the like button, ding the notification bell because there is more to come, and get in the comments and let your thoughts be heard. Thank you for listening and enjoy your day.